Okay, hi everyone. My name is Jamiel. I'm just going to try to figure out this clicker. Quick little bio by myself. I do several different things. First of all, I run a company called Chain House. We do DeFi and AI type of projects. We've just announced a B2B NFT platform called Instamint. And I run a couple of different things. I run the largest blockchain community in New York City. We're about 12,000 people. It's called Blockchain.NYC. I'm also an adjunct professor at Columbia Business School, NYU, and CUNY. I teach graduate level blockchain and AI topics, both on the business side and on the technical side. I also run a central bank digital currency think tank, and we work with a bunch of central banks globally in helping them figure out how they're going to survive the next 10 years. So what I'm going to talk about is this path into DeFi and this kind of integration with NFTs. And the way I'm going to start, I usually spend 4 hours. I do a course on this for 4 hours. I'm going to try to condense it into 10 minutes. And I spend a lot of time. Let's get this clicker working here. I'm not sure if the clicker is working. Okay, I spend a lot of time. I'm currently writing a book for Columbia Press on DeFi, which will be out by next year. Middle of the year, and I wrote a book last year on the core of blockchain for O'Reilly. And I spent a lot of time thinking about tokens, right? So an enormous amount of time wondering what does it mean for something to be a token and the nature of a token. And a lot of this is fairly obvious to a lot of people, but there's a lot that we take for granted. And I want to pin down certain fundamentals and then talk about how those fundamentals transition and impact DeFi, right? So I think we all know what DeFi is, and it's not anything new to anybody, but what is that roadmap from NFT, the world of NFT, where we are today, into the world of DeFi? And here I have a picture of a token. That's a token up on the screen. And a token has, we've heard before, the idea of fungibility and non-fungibility. And a quick example is, let's say I have two DAI tokens. And I converge the two tokens into a single unit. The two original tokens perish, right? They don't exist anymore. And everybody's familiar with this idea of fungibility, right? So they're fungible. But what actually is happening is that there is a loss of information, right? There is partial loss of information, right? And so the word fungibility is often misunderstood because there's also information that is not lost, or there's no willingness to lose that information. Specifically the type information, right? The information about the name of the DAI, right? So that information is not willing to be, cannot be compromised, cannot be removed, right? And then we have the idea of non-fungibility, and a token typically represents something. In this case, we're all familiar with CryptoPunks. And I can have multiple tokens, but there's less of a willingness to lose information in an NFT, right? So in an NFT, there's still possibility to lose information or change information, but less of it is willing to change. So there's a gray area between fungibility and non-fungibility. It's not a binary thing. For example, we worked on a project with the World Bank a couple years ago. We used NFTs underneath to track shipping containers, and it was used in traceability. And it was basically NFTs, and then NFTs could exist for a certain period of time. You had shipping containers, then converge into other shipping containers that are disbanded into other types of containers, and we have this kind of referenceable piece, right? What's important is that there's certain pieces of this token that are negotiable in terms of its change in data, and certain pieces that are not. And so we didn't divide the world into fungible and non-fungible. It was into what information can be lost or modified, and what information cannot be modified. And therefore, my view and our view right now is that the concept of NFTs is a bit of a misnomer, because it will continue to evolve over the coming years. Probably in 10 years, it'll be radically different. So can an NFT point to more than one thing? Right now, we're used to the idea that an NFT points to one thing, a CryptoPunk, but it's entirely possible for an NFT to point to multiple different things. An NFT can point to another NFT, and we see DeFi projects, for example, Charged Particle, Charge.fi, doing things like that where NFTs are holding other NFTs or holding other ERC20s. And that process is going to continue to evolve and get more and more complex, right? So it won't be a one-to-one relationship between NFTs and an asset, but a more complex, robust, potentially trees and things like that will emerge, right? And this is a question I ask often: is it possible for a Satoshi, which is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin, to be an NFT? Is it possible? Is it possible for a Satoshi theoretically to be an NFT? No. Why not? What's that? Yeah, there's no reason why a Satoshi cannot be an NFT. There is entirely no reason why the most fundamental unit of a Bitcoin, a Satoshi, which is 1/100 millionth of a Bitcoin, not be an NFT. It can be an NFT. It's just that when you transfer that NFT, or you transfer 1 Bitcoin, you're transferring 100 million pieces, right? And so there's actually no reason. So the lines between an NFT and fungibility are very, very blurry the more that you dig into it, almost like quantum mechanics. The further you dig into it, the blurrier it gets, right? So, and so there's heuristics that I use, and some of these heuristics I'm writing about this. For example, what is fungibility? We can break it down into a heuristic. The exchange of a similar asset, the same type of asset, results in 0 probability of loss or gain, or 0 risk, right? And then the other way in non-fungibility is that there is a greater than 0%, 0 probability of loss of gain if there's an exchange of the same asset. So if I have a token that represents a house and you have a token that represents a house, there is a very high probability if we exchange tokens, one of us is going to sustain some kind of loss, right? And that's an economic view of fungibility versus non-fungibility versus a token perspective of fungibility and non-fungibility. So this is another way to look at and see how the economic side of tokens and the overemphasis on the non-fungibility side is probably going to take us down the wrong path, right? So, and then provenance is important and heavily talked about in this conference, but we can reduce provenance down to 4 or 5 key factors, right? What is provenance? The most important is the creator, the community, the story, and the moment, right? So I can take a Mona Lisa and I can do an atomic replica, identical replica based on the exact same atoms, and you would say that that's not the Mona Lisa because it's the same hands. Leonardo da Vinci's hands did not touch this replica, right? So the community and all these, and the story behind it and the person behind it are the reason why we say that that's a Mona Lisa and that's not a Mona Lisa, despite the fact that they may be identical, right? So the physicality of the object is incidental. The other aspects matter more, right? It's not central to the provenance, which means the digital world has huge advantages, potentially, over the physical world, okay? Because we can do a lot more when it comes to provenance in the digital world than we can do in the physical world. There's higher costs, higher risks in the physical world, right? Therefore, fungibility is contextual, right? It's based on the context. You can say a $100 bill is fungible with another $100 bill, but if that $100 bill that I have has a serial number that's marked by the DEA, then it's maybe not fungible. You probably will not want to exchange it with me. A $1 bill is probably not fungible with 100 pennies because you don't want to walk around with 100 pennies. So there are other aspects to fungibility and non-fungibility that have to be taken into account, including costs and risks. So it's based on context, and it's a very blurry mess the deeper you dig into it. And I've been digging into it for the past 2 years, right? So, and then we get this question, why would you pay for a JPEG? Then why would you pay for a ripped piece of art, right? Question I want to ask, and I got 50 seconds, is if you're the only person on the planet Earth, what do you own? What do you own if you're the only person on Earth? Yeah, you own everything and nothing. So I get both answers. You own everything and you own nothing, right? Therefore, ownership is a function of community, right? A community is involved in the idea of ownership, right? And we know that community exists around blockchain. Now, I want to get to, let's go back one, to the DeFi piece. The essence of business transactions is that there is always one piece of information that's not negotiable, that's not changeable, across transactions. There's one, whether it's the name of the token, or whether it's a serial number of the credit default swap, or whether it's the address and the time and place of a rental lease, there's always one piece of information that is not modifiable. And therefore, effectively, almost everything is an NFT, right? There's always a piece of information that cannot be modified, that needs to persist across multiple transactions, right? And what that means, for example, and you combine that with provenance, the idea that Goldman Sachs issues a credit default swap versus I am issuing a credit default swap, means that the provenance of that credit default swap will matter, and therefore the cost of that credit default swap in terms of risk and assessment and all that will be different. The default may just be non-fungibility, or what we call non-fungibility today. And fungibility is this awkward exception that we fell into because we started with Bitcoin. We just accidentally started with Bitcoin, and the reality is that everything is non-fungible, and we find that in nature, right? Humans, fingerprints, snowflakes are all unique, and so therefore there is always some information that cannot be modified. And I have to wrap up. I have a few more slides, but I'm going to wrap up. The future of NFTs when it comes to B2B is that enterprises will exchange value using NFTs, right? So 10 years from now, there'll be massive infrastructure in place, layers of infrastructure on top of blockchain that are used to exchange value. So I want to transfer and trade with you. All of that will happen through NFTs, what we call NFTs today. It will be a slight variation of that down the road. It'll be a lot more robust. And that's what I'm looking and I'm working on today in terms of my research. Thank you.